Have you ever thought about this question? Serial killers are usually arrested by the police based on key evidence, and it's rare for their neighbors and friends to figure out who they really are. Maybe you think that these demons are usually ragged, locked up in a mental hospital, and fantasies about crimes day and night. However, the reality is quite the contrary. In fact, serial killers are well aware of social norms, and they will even deliberately play socially accepted roles to conceal their abnormalities. For example, Bundy, who was not only strikingly handsome but also eloquent and politically active. Richard was the epitome of a caring father and husband. Their seemingly normal and even admirable personas were so convincing that even their closest friends never suspected them of being serial killers. If their crimes had remained hidden, they would still be lurking in society, continuing to take people's lives. For everyone, the real horror is not a grotesque face, because people will instinctively be on guard and retreat. But the unsettling dark truth is that serial killers look no different from ordinary people. Randall was born into a respectable family, not only excelling in sports but also possessing an extremely attractive appearance. In college, he was a football wide receiver. In 1974, he was recruited by the Green Bay Packers to join their training camp. Just when everyone thought he was about to become a professional player, 6 years later, Randall was dubbed the Interstate 5 killer by the police, suspected of committing at least 20 murders, over 100 sexual assaults and robberies. The surviving victim stated that during the assault, he was keenly aware of her fear and adjusted his rhetoric accordingly. However, in the next moment, he was able to pull the trigger as if nothing had happened. On December 26, 1950, Randall was born in Salem, Oregon. His father was a manager at the telephone company. His mother was a full-time housewife. In addition to this, he had 2 older sisters. During his childhood, he lived with his sisters in Otter Rock, a picturesque seaside town. Parents always encouraged 3 children to pursue their interests. Later, the 2 older sisters chose academic paths, with one becoming a doctor and the other a lawyer. Randall followed his father's wishes and took up sports. In his teens, the boy attended Newport High School. There, he tried many sports, such as soccer, basketball, and track and field, and ultimately chose football. His athletic talent did not disappoint anyone. Before long, he became a football star at Newport High School. Even the Newport News-Times dedicated an entire page of the newspaper to praising the teenager as the pride of Newport. Neighbors also came forward to say that the boy had been polite since he was young. Although Randall excelled in sports, he had a disturbing quirk. The boy enjoyed exposing himself to women in public, a typical exhibitionist behavior. It is said that this quirk can be traced back to his junior high school days. At the age of 13, he was seen standing by the window and exposing himself. There was a perspective that Randall's exhibitionist behavior might be connected to his family. Despite Randall's affluent family background and the absence of quarrels between his parents, his mother was a perfectionist with extremely high demands for family members. At the same time, 2 elder sisters' exceptional academic performance undoubtedly put immense pressure on Randall. So, the boy gradually developed an inferiority complex, tried to prove his existence through exhibitionist behavior. In high school, Randall was arrested by the police for manually removing his trousers and touching his genitals in front of a group of teenage girls. After his arrest, in order to prevent his parents from discovering his repulsive behavior, Randall only informed his coach. Given that the boy had the potential to become an outstanding football player, the coach attempted to cover up the incident and remain silent so that Randall could continue playing. Later, Randall's parents still found out about the incident. As a respectable family, they could not accept such the thing, so they forced Randall to undergo psychological treatment. However, it only temporarily suppressed his sexual desires and did not fundamentally eliminate his sexual impulses. After graduating from high school, Randall's criminal record was expunged. He entered Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario. However, there, he was arrested for vandalizing his ex-girlfriend's apartment. Although he was acquitted due to insufficient evidence, he could no longer continue his studies there. In 1970, Randall transferred to Portland State University, and there he played as a wide receiver for the Portland State Vikings. During his college years, Randall was regarded as a football star by his fellow students, but almost no one knew that this man had been arrested multiple times for indecent exposure and convicted twice. In 1972, he was convicted of public indecency in Vancouver, Washington. In 1973, he was convicted again for the same offense in Oregon. But these incidents did not disrupt his football career. Later, Randall's football coach recalled, "When he was with me, he was the kindest, most gentlemanly kid I knew. He was quiet and polite, worked hard, and was truly worthy of guidance. He absorbed everything I tried to teach him." Randall's former teammates and peers, however, recalled that Randall led a double life. At first, he spoke in a soft voice, seemed a bit lonely, and had few friends. As time went on, he became more and more abnormal and began to do some strange things. Perhaps because he had committed minor offenses multiple times, Randall chose to drop out of school. Just when people thought his football career was over, in 1974, Randall was drafted by the Green Bay Packers as a wide receiver. This surprised many people, and even Randall's college teammates questioned the selection. He was selected? Are you kidding me? Unfortunately, Randall was cut from the team during training camp, never played a single game. Soon after, he signed with a semi-professional team, but was fired again at the end of the season. Although neither team disclosed the reason for Randall's dismissal, a detective later learned that Randall was fired because he was involved in several indecent exposure cases in the state. At the end of 1974, Randall returned to Portland with feelings of shame and resentment growing inside him, and these emotions, mixed with exhibitionism, led him start a series of robberies and sexual assaults. In 1975, several women reported to the police that they had been attacked by a man with a knife, who not only robbed them of their purses, but also forced them to perform oral sex on him. Later, the police took special measures, arranging for female officers to disguise themselves as ordinary women to lure the attacker into committing another offense. On March 3rd, Randall was arrested by the police. During interrogation, he confessed to the crime and claimed that it was the influence of steroids that caused him to be unable to control his sexual urges. Although this crime sentenced Randall to 10 years in prison, he only served 4 years and was paroled in July 1979. Randall's release coincided with a high school reunion, where he met up with his former classmate Ayers, who was an X-ray technician. In reality, during his 4 years in prison, Randall often corresponded with Ayers through letters. On October 9, 1980, Randall arranged to meet with Ayers. As old friends who had known each other since childhood, Ayers did not refuse the invitation. However, what awaited her was not a warm embrace, but a blow to the head with a blunt object by Randall, who then forcibly dragged her into the apartment, sexually assaulted her, and killed her. On October 11th, Ayers' fiancé found her dead in her apartment. Since she had mentioned to her family that Randall had asked to meet her, they all suspected that Randall was involved in her death. And then, police found Randall for questioning. During the questioning, police found that the man's answers were evasive and even full of lies. Although they wanted to use a lie detector to uncover the truth that Randall was hiding, but he had the right to refuse. In addition, his blood type did not match the semen found in Ayers' body, so the police ruled him out as a suspect. But Ayers' mother remained convinced that Randall was the attacker. In 2005, she contacted the Portland police and persuaded them to restart DNA testing. In 2006, it was confirmed that Randall was the attacker who killed Ayers. A month later, on the morning of November 27th, Randall traveled to northern Portland, where his old friend Darcy lived. She was the ex-girlfriend of one of his college friends. Upon entering Darcy's apartment, he discovered another person, Douglas, Darcy's boyfriend, in the apartment. Later, he tied them both up and killed them. In addition, in 2012, the police confirmed through DNA testing that Randall was the attacker. The Interstate 5, which is 1,380 miles long, starts in San Diego, California, and ends in Blaine, Washington, passing through Oregon along the way. Although most people refer to this road as the 5, in the 1980s it was also known as Death Road. In addition to Roger, who became known as the Interstate 5 Strangler, there was a disturbing serial killer on this highway, Randall, known as the Interstate 5 Killer. After killing 3 victims, Randall drove his 1974 champagne-colored Volkswagen Beetle, constantly shuttling around Interstate 5 and committing a series of robberies, sexual assaults, and murders. During the attacks, Randall usually concealed his identity by wearing a hoodie, sporting a fake beard, and applying a strip of athletic tape across his nose. Police speculate that he may have done this to conceal his physical features and prevent victims from recognizing him in police lineups. Randall's attacks were completely random, although most of his victims were slender white women in their 20s. His motives for murder were almost always because the victims rejected his sexual advances. Later, Randall claimed that he had not sexually assaulted the girls, and that he did not need to do so because the girls wanted him. Furthermore, unlike many serial killers, whose killing patterns typically have intervals or cooling-off periods, Randall's murders and other criminal acts increased in frequency. On December 9, 1980, Randall, wearing a fake beard and carrying a gun, robbed a gas station in Vancouver, Washington. 4 days later, he attacked an ice cream shop in Eugene, Oregon. A day later, he robbed a drive-in restaurant in Albany, Oregon. On December 21st, Randall arrived in Seattle, where he used a gun to force a female waitress into a restaurant bathroom and coerced her into masturbating. On January 8th, he returned to the Vancouver gas station he had robbed in December. This time, he not only took the money from the cash register, but also forced a female attendant to expose her breasts. On January 11th, he returned to Eugene and robbed a store. Immediately afterwards, on January 12th, he shot and wounded a female store clerk at a store in Sutherland, Oregon. 2 days later, Randall broke into the girl's home wearing a fake beard. He ordered the 8-year-old and 10-year-old girls to take off their clothes and sexually assaulted them. During the assault, he also forced the older girl to perform oral sex on him. 4 days later, Randall broke into an office building in Salem, sexually assaulted 2 women, Shari and Beth, and ultimately killed Shari and severely injured Beth, leaving her near death. Shari was the only victim for whom Randall was formally charged with murder. On January 26th and 29th, he committed further robberies in Eugene, Medford, and Grants Pass. On February 3rd, 37-year-old Donna and her 14-year-old daughter Janelle were found dead on a bed in their home in Mountain Gate, California. Both had been shot multiple times in the head, and forensic tests revealed that Janelle had been sexually assaulted before she was killed. On the same day, Randall went to Reading, kidnapped and sexually assaulted a female shop assistant. On February 9th, in Corvallis, Randall robbed a fabric store while wearing a fake beard and molested the clerk and her customers before leaving. 3 days later, Randall committed multiple robberies and 3 sexual assaults in Vancouver, Olympia, and Bellevue. When planning to return to Portland, Randall intended to host a Valentine's Day party at a downtown hotel. He invited friends and acquaintances from college, but no guests showed up. So he drove to the home of 18-year-old Julie, whom he had met while working as a bouncer at a bar. At around 2 a.m. on February 15th, he arrived at Julie's home. Around 4 a.m., he raped Julie and then shot her in the head, taking her life. In fact, from the first murder, Randall had been considered by the police as possibly the Interstate 5 killer. However, they had no substantial evidence or reason until the surviving Beth picked Randall out of a police lineup. On March 5th, Randall was taken in for questioning. Although the results were not entirely satisfactory, 2 days later, when the police searched his apartment, they found a bullet that matched the murder weapon and tape of the same brand used to bind the victim. On February 28th, a detective also obtained a record of Randall's phone calls. A police chief said, "All of a sudden it became obvious. It was a map of Interstate 5. Randall was addicted to the phone. He made thousands of calls. He had girlfriends everywhere." On March 16th, Randall was charged and prosecuted by multiple jurisdictions for the murder of Shari, as well as multiple counts of rape, sodomy, attempted kidnapping, armed robbery, and illegal possession of firearms. On June 26th, after 3.5 hours of deliberation, Randall was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment plus an additional 90 years. On December, Randall was again convicted of sodomy and weapons charges in connection with the Seattle attack, adding another 35 years to his sentence. In the end, Randall was sentenced to serve time at Oregon State Prison. His father visited him briefly in prison and said that he was not the son he knew. Since then, Randall's family has not spoken about the matter.